The president of the Senate shall have no power to solely determine, accept, reject, or otherwise adjudicate or resolve disputes over the proper certificate
Isn't that
of
interesting?
ascertainment of appointment of electors, the validity of electors, or the votes of electors.
Wait, pause. You realize that that is exactly what Donald Trump was asking Vice President Pence to do, right? Um, so I called you on here to talk because you reacted to the post that I made when
Mhm,
Trump won re-election. Um,
mhm.
I just wanted to see. So okay, I don't know if you've been keeping up with any of my debate stuff lately. Um, basically, my main point that I make is that I think Donald Trump is an authoritarian threat to the country. I think that
Mhm.
everything that happened on J6th and the plot to overturn was a big thing that the voters should have checked and never let back into office. I think we should probably just go from there. Um, yeah.
All right, great.
So can you give me a general outline of what happened on J6?
Mhm. Yeah. So on January 6th, I think there were certainly a lot of people who committed wrongdoing. I really, 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 really think Trump uh, didn't really have anything to do with it other than his words from the Capitol. And I did watch the speech. He said, "Peacefully and patriotically make your voice heard." I think 3 hours into the entire ordeal, he uh, he tweeted out for everyone to go home. He also released a video on Twitter and offered the National Guard to the mayor of D.C. I think and Nancy Pelosi, to which they declined. So even he acknowledged during that point that there was an issue happening. So now in 2024, as a Republican myself and as a hardcore MAGA Republican, I denounce what happened on January 6th. So
Oh well, I mean that's okay. Um, do you think that the things that led up to January 6th were significant at all, like the sending of the alternative electorate slates or the pressuring of Jeffrey Clark, or are you familiar with all of the stuff surrounding that?
I am familiar with the quote fake electors uh, uh, what the liberal media calls a scheme. However, I don't think that that had anything to do with January 6th. I think January 6th was mainly brought on by the speech, and a lot of people who were affiliated with January 6th were there listening to the speech. I don't think that any of those events correlate at all, really.
You don't think there's a correlation with them invading the Capitol grounds while the certification of the electoral votes was happening?
I I that's not what I just said. I think there's a massive correlation uh with that and their disdain for the results of the election. I don't think that the fake electors had anything to do with them or the pressuring of Jeffrey Clark, which you just laid out, has anything to do with them leading and going into the Capitol to ruin the counting of the votes, or sorry, the certification of the votes. So
So why do you think people went into the Capitol on January 6th? Like
I
what
think
do you think was in the mind of the people that invaded the Capitol grounds?
pure disdain for the results of the 2020 election.
Not a will to disrupt the certification of the election?
I think that that could have been a component. However, I wasn't there, and quite honestly, I'm not one of them. However, I don't think that Trump or the pressuring of Jeffrey Clark or the fake elector scheme had anything to do with that, honestly.
Okay. So the way that I see it is that Donald Trump took multiple steps in order to overturn the results of the 2020 election. He resorted to legal means by filing the lawsuits, and whenever that didn't work, he moved to extra legal means. via pressuring Rosen to send that letter to the Georgia state legislatures, through sending the alternative slates of electors, through pressuring Mike Pence to make the unilateral decision as to which slate of electors were valid and which ones weren't. And when none of that worked, January 6th was kind of like the plan Z of it. Like that was the last part. I think Donald Trump, whether or not he knew he was
So
inciting
so
the mob, I don't
so
know.
so
But
you were saying that Donald Trump had a some sort of alternative plan and January 6th was plan Z. So are you saying that he had some hand in that?
um,
Or in directing people to the Capitol, even though he said peacefully and patriotically? Is that what you think?
if I'm being hyper charitable, I think that he was wildly irresponsible. Whether or not I think that he directly incited the mob,
I don't
I
think that's
don't
being
know.
hyper
But I think he
charitable at
was
all.
wild. I think he was wildly irresponsible at absolute best for Donald Trump.
Okay, so what do you think? I'm not asking about absolute best. I'm just asking you what you think. Do you think he had a hand in it? Do you think he played a part in it? Do you think he commanded people to go there, even though he quite literally didn't? Or
I don't know. I don't know if he
you don't know.
if his speech was like implicitly trying to get supporters to go onto the Capitol grounds. I know he was trying to get them to go to the Capitol grounds to protest. I don't know if he had it in his mind that they were going to break into the Capitol grounds, but I do know that once they were on the Capitol grounds, he didn't really seem to care that much.
He didn't seem out. So how do you explain the tweets and the National Guard offering if he didn't care?
The National Guard offering, I don't know. He very well may not have wanted people to go into the Capitol. That's a possibility, but he
He
definitely wanted people to
obviously didn't.
protest there.
Obviously he didn't.
But if he had a super precedent, like if he really wanted to stop people from going into the Capitol, why wouldn't he like order the National Guard himself? He's the president. He can control that over Nancy Pelosi. And why is it that when the Capitol,
And the mayor
why
of DC.
why is it that while the people were in the Capitol building, instead of telling them to go home, he tweeted out that Mike Pence has failed to uphold the Constitution. Or
First of all, I think that the Mike Pence tweet was completely unnecessary. Um, and I think I said that on one of my podcast episodes, but look, I don't think the Mike Pence tweet was necessary. However, even though he tweeted that out, I feel like that was a more personal belief rather than goading people to go into the Capitol. When even before that tweet, he said peacefully and patriotically. And then I think a little after that, tweet, he offered the National Guard. On top of that, he tweeted out later
he offered the
for
National
all
Guard
of
the
them
night
to.
before.
Hmm?
He offered the National Guard the night before.
The night before he tweeted.
The night before on January 5th, he offered the National Guard.
Oh, all right. Well, Well, either way, look, uh, this this core point for me is that January 6th was wrong. I don't think that any of the electors or any pressuring of anybody or even incitement happened at all. And according to you, you don't even know
Well, no,
if
I
you
just said I
think
don't know if he had like the mens rea, like the guilty mind. I don't know if he was like
well
extremely deluded or if he actually wanted people to break into the Capitol.
Well, if he wanted people to break into the Capitol, I'm pretty sure he would have said that. I mean, Trump doesn't hold back. And if he says peacefully and patriotically, then how can you possibly say that he wanted people to break into the Capitol? Or you just don't know, which I think it's kind of naive to not know either, especially when he said what he said.
I would say that, like I said, most charitable that I'd be willing to give you is that he was grossly irresponsible. I would be perfectly willing to argue that point. Whether or not I think he was like explicitly dog whistling by saying like we're going to march onto the Capitol grounds or saying we have to fight like hell to take our nation back. You know, like those are very charged. That's very charged language to tell a very charged
Every
group.
single politician on earth uses some sort of hyperbole.
That's
Is
true,
that a common known
but
fact?
not every politician on earth tells people that their election is being stolen from them and that their country's going to go to hell unless they fight for it and tell them to march onto
I've
Capitol grounds to
never,
pressure Mike Pence
ever,
to do the right thing.
ever, ever, ever heard any of that type of rhetoric out of a writer from from January 6th. Me personally, I've never heard that from them. What I think was in their mind
Well, they were
was
literally
that they
chanting,
were
"Hang Mike
afraid to
Pence."
lose. Once again, that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. However, what I'm saying is that I've never heard a person from January 6th say that they wanted to explicitly overturn the election and riot and make it happen. I've never heard that personally. However, I do agree that what they did was wrong, and I denounce everything they did that day, and
Yeah, I
so did
understand,
Donald
but
Trump.
I'm trying to hyper fixate on Donald Trump's involvement. So can we go over a couple facts just to
I
make sure we're
don't
on
I
the
don't
same
think
ground?
they had any massive involvement.
Can we go over
He
that? Can we
literally
go over?
used hyperbole like every other politician.
Can we go over a set of facts just to make sure that we agree on
Sure,
the
sure.
absolute ground level fact? Okay. So at 12:54, the first breach of the Capitol grounds happens on January 6th, right?
Yes.
At 1 p.m., the joint session in order to certify the electoral votes happens, right?
Hmm.
At 1:02, Mike Pence tweets a letter saying, quote, "It is my considered judgment that my oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming any unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not."
Hmm.
Okay. At 1:25 p.m., Donald Trump becomes aware of the riots at the Capitol.
Hmm.
And then the first tweet that he puts out is that Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what he should have done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving the states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. The USA demands the truth. So he says that while people are in the Capitol.
All right.
That is the first
So
piece of correspondence he has with the rioters in the Capitol, right?
he offered the National Guard the night before and it was declined. However, what I want to make clear is that how would we know whether or not he was aware of what was going on at the Capitol
Because we have testimony from White House aides.
from White House aides?
Yeah.
Which White House aides?
Whichever ones testified to the Jack Smith indictment, or whichever ones testified as a part of the Jack Smith indictment, which ones testified to the January 6th committee. I don't have like specific names. I'm just like this is.
You don't have
I
you don't
don't
have
think
specific
this is contested that Donald Trump became aware of people in the Capitol.
Actually, I've never heard this before, and quite frankly, I'd like to know who these people are. If they're claiming to be White House aides and they're testifying, I'd personally like to know who they are, especially to such a high up committee as the January 6th committee, or testifying in the Jack Smith indictment, as you said. But if you don't have names, that's fine. It just seems a little shaky.
It seems a little shaky that Donald Trump would become aware of the all
It
day news
seems a
coverage of
little
January
shaky
6th.
that we don't know who these people are who are providing these supposed facts.
So are you just arguing with me to argue, or are you arguing because this is a substantial point? Because I don't think it's a huge jump to say that Donald Trump became aware of something that was being covered 24/7 on every news station.
I'm not arguing with you just to argue. I'm just arguing, putting a point of contention out there about who is providing the facts. That's all. And
Okay.
and if I can't question who is providing the facts, then this seems quite useless if we can't agree on a few things.
Well, it
All I want to know is who are providing the facts. If there is not very credible people, not very reputable people providing the facts, then I feel like those quote facts have to be put in question. That's all.
okay. The fact that he became aware of the Capitol riot.
At that specific time, yes.
Okay. So why do you think he tweeted out that thing about Mike Pence not having the courage to do what was right to save our country?
I think it was mostly a personal response to Mike Pence. I don't think it was to rile up the people at the Capitol. I personally, that's what I believe.
Okay.
Also, since he said peacefully and patriotically before he had tweeted that out, I'm going to assume that he did not want people to riot at the Capitol in the first place.
Do you agree that it was
And
probably
I
irresponsible of him to tweet that out?
Do I think it was irresponsible? Yes. Trump says a lot of irresponsible things.
Okay, I'm glad that we can at least agree on that. Um, so okay, do you agree that in the speech that he gave at the Ellipse on January 6th, he was talking about how you can't concede when there's theft involved, and that this was not a close election, and that we have to stop the steal?
I think he was using hyperbole with that. And the furthest I'd give you and the most charitable I'd be to you is that that was irresponsible given the temperature of the political climate at the time.
Okay,
Um,
and the
I think
temperature
that
of
that's
the
an
rally, right? Because there was a very high temperature rally as well.
well, I think the whole country was was a high in temperature. So
Sure, but that rally in particular was very rowdy. Like they were chanting "fight" and fight. They were chanting "fight for Trump." Like it. It was a very
I
heated rally.
mean, I mean again, political hyperbole, but okay.
Okay, I would argue that the amount of hyperbole that Donald Trump was taking part in far exceeds any other politician right now. Like
I
we can you show me anything from a major political voice that is akin to our country is being stolen from us and we have to fight to take it back?
President Millays multiple pieces of hyperbole, pieces of metaphor, the massive chainsaw. Um, he's currently running Venezuela and doing a very good job with a lot of hyperbole. Um,
Wait, so okay,
deep,
the
deep. Yeah,
comparison you made is the president of Venezuela.
yes, the president. Yes,
Should we be striking the same tone that the
I'm.
president of Venezuela is?
I'm not sure what your point is. A lot of different political leaders around the world have some of the same political messaging or political hyperbole. I'm giving
I'm
you a
I
name. You
might I
wanted a
might
name.
be
I've
mistaken,
given.
but isn't Venezuela like an authoritarian country?
Not anymore. He's a capitalist, and he actually toppled the authoritarian party.
Okay, I'd have to look into that. Do you think that Mike Pence had the authority to do what they were asking him to do?
Do I think that he had the authority to certify the electors they wanted him to certify?
Unilaterally, yeah.
It's legally a little shaky, but I can see what they were going for.
Okay. Do you agree that in the Eastman memo, he explicitly lays out how it would diverge from the Electoral Count Act?
Mm,
How it would break the procedures laid out in the
yeah,
Electoral
yeah,
Count Act?
yeah, yeah. Um, I I don't think that that's the case, honestly. So no, I don't. I don't.
Okay. It is. This is a direct quote from the first Eastman memo. Is that it would
Okay.
break the procedure set out in the act, which referring to the Electoral Count Act.
Which procedure?
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Hmm.
Okay. So this is what the Eastman memo says. VP Pence, presiding over the joint session, begins to open and count ballots, starting with Alabama, um, without conceding that the procedure specified by the Electoral Count Act of going through the states alphabetically is required. When he gets to Arizona, he announces that he has multiple slates of electors and so is going to defer his decision until finishing the other states. This would be the first break in the procedure set out in the act.
Okay. Which procedure? Do they give us the
So,
specific?
in the electoral counting, you are supposed to go through alphabetically through the states and declare the electors valid. And by taking the state and throwing it to the back of the line to come back to, or to say that we can't declare either of these electors valid, but because you have a non-certified alternative slate of electors, This would break the procedure laid out in the Electoral Count Act, which is a federal law, presiding the count, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the Electoral Count Act of 1887, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it could be possible. Uh, the the main issue is that if they throw it to the back of the line, it is going to look a certain way. However, in the Electoral Count Act of 1887, I don't think there's any specific clause or rule that says you can't do that. I mean, counting them or verifying them uh, alphabetically could work. However, if 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 the vice president could say that he could not certify them at that specific time and then come back to them later, I don't think that that'd be a violation of any massive clause within the act, and
So
I
if
don't
we
even think that there is a clause within the act that outlaws that. So I don't think that there'd be be
okay,
a violation. Period. Honestly,
why did Eastman say that it would be a violation?
I think that Eastman was working with Pence.
Working with okay. Why did Eastman say that this would be a violation of the Electoral Count Act if it
East
wasn't?
East Eastman did not write the Electoral Count Act. Eastman does not say what is in the Electoral Count Act and what isn't. What isn't in the Electoral Count Act is a clause that prevents what Donald Trump was asking for to happen.
But the person that made the memo laying out the legal strategy of what they wanted Mike Pence to do says that it breaks the Electoral Count Act, right?
The He can say that all he wants, but he doesn't make what's in the act. He doesn't invent the act. He can't rewrite the act however he wants.
Okay.
And there is no specific clause within the act that would make that a violation, period. Which means that it's not a violation. Plain and simple. So Eastman was wrong, no matter how much he says whatever the hell he wants to put in his memos.
Okay. Um. So, okay. Do you do you approve of the legal strategy that Eastman was presenting to Mike Pence, of him unilaterally determining which electors are valid and which ones are not?
Do I I'm not understanding the question. Do I approve
Like, do you think that that is
of
sound legal strategy? Do you think that's a legal thing for them to be able to do, or do you think that that would be work in the interest of the American democracy
for them to put electors to the back of the line?
for them to ask Mike Pence to decertify the state certified electors and certify Trump's electors?
Well, as there's no actual clause in the Electoral Count Act that says that that's a violation or that says that that's against the rules, I think that there's a possibility that he could have did it, and honestly, I don't think that it would have been a violation of anything. So I do think that it's a sound legally, um,
Even though the
seeing
author
as
said that it was not, because
the author of what
Eastman,
of the memo.
yeah,
All right. Well, look, the author Eastman can say whatever the hell he wants. He can write whatever the hell he wants. He can put whatever the hell he wants in a memo. As long as that act does not say that it is a violation or says that it cannot happen in the future of American democracy, then guess what? It's not illegal, which means it's legally sound. So look, I I think this is all an issue of the Electoral Count Act being too opaque within its mandates. Um, if they had wrote it more thoroughly and had included that, and then this had, I would totally be in complete support of you and Eastman, but it did not write that.
well, you wouldn't be in
Whoever,
support of Eastman
whoever
because he's asking Mike Pence to break the Electoral Count Act anyway because he thinks that the Electoral Count Act is unconstitutional.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you. I cut out for a bit. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. John Eastman was arguing that Mike Pence should violate the Electoral Count Act on January 6th because he thinks that the Electoral Count Act is unconstitutional.
Okay, well then John Eastman is wrong with it being unconstitutional, and John Eastman is wrong with it um with breaking the Electoral Count Act too. So John Eastman is wrong on both counts,
Okay,
as far as I'm concerned.
so we have a. Okay, so do we agree that Donald Trump was setting up meetings with Greg Jacob, Mike Pence, John Eastman, and himself to pressure Mike Pence to go through with what Eastman was laying out?
I can't agree on anything until I know the sources these came from.
This is
These
laid out in the Jack Smith evidence motion.
Do we have any actual concrete evidence like text message chains of this
We have
being said
we have
or
testimony under perjury from Greg Jacob that this happened, and no one involved denies that any of these meetings happened. Donald Trump called John Eastman one of the greatest constitutional lawyers in the country.
okay, well then I disagree with Donald Trump. Anyway, look,
Okay, but it
the
goes a little beyond just disagreeing with him though, because he's trying to pressure his vice president to make the unilateral decision as to
how
which slate of
how
electors is
how
valid.
how do we know how do we know that those meetings were not just simple meetings between a lawyer and the vice president?
We have testimony from Greg Jacob, Mike Pence's legal counsel, outlining exactly what was happening in these meetings.
Well, of course he would say that, being because
Wait,
he's
why?
defending
Why?
Mike Pence.
Why? Why? Why would he make up what they were pressure? Why did Donald Trump even fall out with Mike Pence in the first place?
Honestly, I'm not involved with the inner workings of the White House. Trust me, I wish I was.
I can answer why
But
they fell out.
well, I can most likely answer what I can assess based on their uh their working relationship, and I think that that's the 2020 election results and
Right.
certification.
So
However,
the
yeah,
problem is that Mike Pence doesn't have like this super special interest to go against his former running mate. Like this
he
isn't you're making up a
definitely
bias. Like
does
this
when he runs
there'd
for
be no reason
president
for this to
4
happen.
years later. He definitely does.
Mike for Mike Pence to run for president 4 years later.
Yes, he
So okay,
literally
he was
he
sabotaging the most important person within his political party in order for him to run for president in 4 years.
in order to become the most important person in his political party.
Okay,
I mean, which vice president doesn't want to be president? Every single one of them do. Every
I
single one of
think the
them.
conspiracy that you're putting forth that Greg Jacob perjured himself and lied under oath in order to make Donald Trump look bad, even though Donald Trump and John Eastman don't deny anything that he's testified to, is a little strange.
Honestly, I'm not I'm not really gonna get into the conspiracy theory because that's the furthest thing I am. However, I really, 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 really think that Greg Jacob defend in defense of Mike Pence may have perjured himself in order to defend Mike Pence. And I believe that Mike Pence personally sabotaged Trump in order to run for president in the next 4 years to become the most important person in the Republican Party. That's what I personally believe. I'm
Based
not
off of
saying it's
nothing,
true,
right?
and
Based
this
off
is
of nothing,
not.
right?
I
There's no
I
reason
couldn't
to
hear you. Sorry.
there's no facts to back that up. There's no reason to believe that, right?
Other than simple stretch of logic, no.
Okay. So we're just assuming that someone under threat of criminal action perjured himself to detail a meeting, like in detail, go through a meeting in which he met with John Eastman, Mike Pence, and Donald Trump. And John Eastman, Mike Pence, and Donald Trump don't deny any of the facts of the matter, but you're just going to assume that he perjured himself so the person he's legally representing could sabotage Donald Trump and so he can run for office in 4 years?
Honestly, that the latter half is what I believe. First of all, somebody can simply not respond to something and be innocent. All right. So John Eastman and Donald Trump, although I'm not really a fan of Eastman, but Donald Trump cannot respond to something and still be innocent. I mean,
So,
I don't understand what you're getting at. You're trying to interrogate me about 2020, about January 6th. Guess what? I don't like it. I don't support
but
what
okay,
happened. That,
here's the thing: is that Donald Trump was pressuring his vice president to partake
and you're going back and forth.
in illegal action
This
to
is the
make
only
Donald Trump the
this
president
is
again.
a
That's
solitary
why.
point that you have anything to back up on.
No,
Look,
listen,
Donald
Noah,
Trump
Noah,
won the 2024 election.
Don.
Let's
Okay,
talk about the
no,
future.
Noah,
Let's talk about his first term.
I need you to accept this. Donald Trump
You
pressured his vice
need me to
president,
do anything.
Noah. Donald Trump pressured his vice president to illegally make himself president again. That is what happened.
That is not what happened.
So, did he not pressure Mike Pence to go through with what was in the Eastman memo illegally?
The Eastman memo
Yep.
is a farce. It is fake. It is not good. It is bad. I hate it. Guess what?
Donald
I
Trump
can say
agreed
all
with it.
the
Donald Trump
terrible,
called John
terrible things
Eastman.
I
Donald
say
Trump
about the
called John. I
Eastman
don't.
memo.
Noah,
The
listen.
Eastman
All
memo
due
can say
respect, you're not
whatever it
running for
wants,
president.
but as long as the Electoral Count Act does not say that what Donald Trump was asking for is a violation, then it is not illegal. That is my stance legally on that whole ordeal.
But
Now,
Noah, here's the
with
problem. Here's the problem: is that Donald Trump had Eastman backing him up and trying to pressure Mike Pence to do this. He called him one of the greatest constitutional lawyers in America during his J6
Donald,
ellipse speech. This is the
Donald
person who he
Trump,
was trying to get to overturn the election results for
a
him.
lot of great things about Mike Pompeo too. He's not that great of a guy either. Guess what? Donald Trump says a lot of good things about a lot of people when they do good for him.
Okay,
I don't like John Eastman. I do not like what he wrote. I don't like the Eastman memo, and I
I need
disagree with him
I need
fundamentally.
where do you
Do
disagree? Where
do
do you
you accept
disagree with
that?
where do
Do
you
you accept that?
No, I do not accept that because
You don't.
you're proudly supporting the person who wholeheartedly backed the Eastman memo and tried to get Mike Pence to go through with it even though he knew it was illegal to make himself the president again.
I don't think it was illegal to violate a non-violation. I mean, there
So if the
is no
but Noah,
violate.
the
There,
lawyer who wrote
now,
it said it was illegal. Donald Trump knew that it would violate the Electoral Count Act. Mike Pence knew that it would
the
violate the Electoral
lawyer
Count
who
Act.
wrote it
Eric
was an
Hirschman,
idiot. The
John,
lawyer who
John
wrote it was a
Greg
moron.
Jacob, everybody in the White House agreed that this would not be a legal thing, and he's being indicted for trying to break the Electoral Count Act to make himself the president again. So I don't understand how you're saying that you don't think
All
this is
of those
illegal when,
cases will be thrown out,
yeah,
just like
because
Jack
he's the
Smith.
president again, because he's just going to be able to fire the special counsel. That doesn't mean that he's innocent. That means that he's just firing the special counsel.
Look, I have no more to say on this specific issue. The furthest you're going to get me to give you is that I hate what happened on January 6th. I
But
publicly
you
denounce
don't
it.
hate it enough to where it would stop you from being a self-described MAGA Republican. You don't hate
I
enough that he tried to pressure
I
his vice
don't see
president to
any
make
I
him
don't
president
see
again
any correlation
in
at all.
spite of
I
the
see
people voting against
absolutely
him.
no correlation.
You have no problem with supporting the guy who tried to make himself the president again in spite of all of the people voting him out of office. For what? Like what is so good about Donald Trump that it would excuse him trying to illegally put himself back in office?
First of all, I don't believe it was illegal, and if you can give me a clause uh, of the Election Count Act that would dispute that, then I would love to hear that. Second off, I I do believe that Mike Pence had an underlying desire to be president, and that's exactly why he did what he did in 2020. Um, I do not like John Eastman. All right, I do not like that Trump messed up with having him extremely close to him. I believe that he was a terrible I, ideologue to even have around in the first place, and I believe that he's a crappy lawyer. All right, now that's the furthest you're getting. That's the only thing
So
you're getting from
if the
me. Now, can
Electoral
we
Count Act,
please talk?
No, because this is all I wanted to talk about now. If the Electoral Count Act lays
Oh
out
my
the specific
God.
procedure, if it lays
Because
out the
this
specific
this
procedure,
is the only this is the only point that you even had a
we've been talking for,
possibility of winning.
yeah,
Can we
because
talk about the
Noah,
future of America?
Noah, the fact that I'm winning on a topic in which Donald Trump tried to overturn the fair results of an election to make himself president again,
I
that's the
said
only
you had
point
the
I need to
possibility
win
to
on.
win,
That's the only
not
point I
you're
need to
winning.
win on because you're supporting someone who tried to illegally overturn the results of the election. So I have a very simple question. If the Electoral Count Act is law in which it dictates the specific procedure in which a process is laid out, diverging from that process would be breaking the Electoral Count Act, right?
I disagree
Okay.
because it isn't the exact opposite of what is being laid out in the Electoral Count Act. It is a very, 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 very small, minute difference,
Well, the big
which is
the big
which is
difference the big difference is that they
yeah.
were trying to get Mike Pence to act unilaterally and not have the Congress involved in the certification of the electors at all. That was the big difference.
Honestly, I really even think that that's a stretch. Legally, I really do think that that's a stretch.
Okay. Do you think that it is in the spirit of our democracy to have the fate of the election lie in the vice president's hands?
I think that as the vice president is president of the Senate and has a foot in the legislative branch, that it would be in the best interest of the vice president and the American people to properly hand the baton over to a member of the legislative branch in order to certify an election and slates of electors
Which is not
in this specific
which is
case.
not what they were asking to for Mike Pence to do. They were not asking him to hand off the baton to somebody in Congress. They were asking him to do it unilaterally.
He is the person in Congress that I was talking about. He does
Oh,
have
okay. So you think it is in the best interest of our
a,
democracy to have the
a
vice president make the decision as to who is president again?
if he's in Congress and he is president of the Senate, I don't see how legally that would be a stretch, seeing how he is a Congress member. So
Do you think that would be a
so
good
yeah,
result? Do you think it's a good result for the vice president to be able to choose who is the president by decertifying certified votes from the states?
I really think this is a massive, massive, massive stretch.
It's because
I mean,
you can't
there
gauge in any of it. That's why. That's a very simple yes or no question. Do you think it's okay to put
it
the
is
fate of
not a
electors'
very,
hands
very simple
in the vice
question. It
president?
is a three-pronged, extremely, extremely biased question that is framed incorrectly and in your favor.
It's exactly what they were asking him to decertify the state certify electors to certify Trump's electors, and so handing the presidency to Donald Trump. Would you support this if like a Democrat did it?
Absolutely.
You would support it if Kamala Harris said that these electors from Florida and Michigan and Georgia cannot be counted, but these alternative states that have no state certification can be. So I actually won all of these swing states and I am the president now.
I think it legally would not be an issue.
Okay, then Noah, why the fuck do we vote? Why do we vote if the vice president can just make the determination as to which slates of electors are
We
valid or
just
not?
here. I think in that specific instance, where the president requested, where it
It's
seems
not the
to
president's
have been
job to
needed.
request that.
All right. Okay, I'm just gonna keep talking because I don't even know how to respond to that. All right, look, I think in that specific instance, where the president requested, where there are a bunch of people in America who support it happening in the first place, I think that it would be in the best interest of the American people and the vice president to do what was requested of him.
To be clear, though,
If
the majority of the people did not support what Donald Trump was advocating for because he got
I
voted
do
out of office.
not, I did not say that. I did not say the majority. I said the American people.
Yeah, by saying the American people, you're implying the majority of the American people.
I'm not implying anything. I'm just
Okay,
saying
so
the
you think
American
that
people.
American people supporting illegal action from the presidency to make the vice president choose him to be president again justifies that plot?
That's not what I said at all.
Noah, why do we vote if we will put the fate of the electors' hands in the vice president? Why should we even vote?
Did I say that I want it to happen in all cases? I didn't.
Why should we?
I didn't.
If it's allowed to happen in one case, it's going to happen in every case. Because why the fuck would you bother voting if the vice president can choose who's president?
That is not what I'm saying.
It is
Very,
that is
very,
what you are
very.
arguing for. To be clear, because you are arguing that what Donald
I
Trump
actually
did was
didn't catch that.
okay.
Sorry.
By extension, you're arguing that what Donald Trump was doing was okay because even though he was trying to get the vice president to decertify state electors to make him president again. So the question is, why do we even vote if the fate of the election lies in the vice president's hands? Why vote?
How far is this going to go? Because
Until you
I
answer the
was
question.
really, really, really looking forward to talking about the future of America rather than talking about what happened in 2020.
The reason that you want to
isn't
talk
even
about the future of
relevant anymore
America is because
he
you can't.
lost the election.
The
It
reason
doesn't
the
matter.
reason that you are so interested in talking about the future of America is because you don't want to relitigate any of the totally batshit insane criminal activities that the president
It's
that you
not
proudly
criminal.
support
It's not
engaged
criminal. It's not criminal. Can we just read the Election Count Act, please? Please.
Do you want to read the Electoral Count Act?
Sure.
Okay.
I have it right here.
Do you have the new one or do you have the old one?
I have the old one.
Okay, cool. Do you want to read it?
Sorry, I'm trying to get it on the Cornell Law School. Okay. Congress shall be in session on the 6th day of January, succeeding every meeting of the electors. The Senate and House of Representatives shall meet in the hall of the House of Representatives, excuse me, at the hour of 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that day, and the President of the Senate shall be their presiding officer. Powers of the President of the Senate, ministerial in nature, powers explicitly denied, appointments of tellers. Number one, ministerial in nature, except as otherwise provided in this chapter, the role of the President of the Senate while presiding over the joint session shall be limited to performing solely ministerial duties. The President of the Senate shall have no power to solely determine, accept, reject, or otherwise adjudicate or resolve disputes over the proper certificate
Isn't that
of
interesting?
ascertainment of appointment of electors, the the validity of electors, or the votes of electors.
Wait, pause. You realize that is exactly what Donald Trump was asking Vice President Pence to do, right?
It doesn't say anything about switching out electors. So
No. It said that the president does not have the sole power to determine which electors are certified, right? Which is what they were asking Mike Pence to do.
well, it says the proper certificate of ascertainment of appointment of electors, the validity of electors, or the votes of electors.
Correct.
However, what I'm mainly focusing on is that they don't talk about rejecting and then accepting other electors. So
Even if we agree, what you just read out right now, what they were asking Mike Pence to do violates the Electoral Count Act. Whether or not he went on to do another thing after,
what they were asking Mike Pence to do was deny electors and then accept new ones. I
But
don't
if the
see
Electoral
the
Count Act
only
says that he cannot
prohibition
solely
of that
determine,
this specific act.
Noah, if the Electoral Count Act lies out that he cannot solely determine if a slate of electors is invalid, then how the fuck could he validate the other ones if he couldn't have even invalidated the first ones? What, you would have to violate the Electoral Count Act in order to do the second part that I'm laying out. So regardless, even if he didn't want to do the second part, he did want Mike Pence to violate the Electoral Count Act just like you laid out.
I completely disagree.
Noah, how? You just read out exactly what they were asking Mike Pence to do aside from him upholding the Trump electors afterwards. If
I'm sorry,
Noah,
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
If the murder law, if the laws against murder say that I can't murder anybody, and then I say, oh well, it's okay because I murdered someone and then put on a blue shirt. They never bring up a blue shirt in any murder statutes. Like, it doesn't matter if I did something after I committed the. No, what I'm laying out is that it doesn't matter if you do something. No, it doesn't matter if no,
okay.
if you do something afterwards that doesn't break the law, that doesn't justify the first part of you breaking the law. Him making the sole decision as to which decertifying electors is illegal. It doesn't matter what he does afterwards. That part is illegal, and you just laid that out through whoever you cited to analyze the Electoral Count Act.
The Cornell Law School.
Right.
However, look, what I'm focusing on is that he did have the well.
No. Yeah, he did not.
Trying to rationalize. Okay. He could have accepted the Trump electors, denied them first, and I don't think that it could have violated the act. Plain and simple. It does not
No,
talk
how
about
if he's making the sole
accepting
decision as to
other
which electors are valid, how does that not violate the part of the Electoral Count Act that you just read out saying that the vice president cannot make the sole determination as to which electors are decertified?
It says nothing about accepting other electors after you denied other ones.
No, it doesn't matter if it says, it doesn't matter what you do afterwards if you do the first crime.
I really don't think that that's the case. Especially within this specific scenario, there are a lot of nuanced
that's not nuanced. You just laid out exactly the crime, and then you're saying, oh well, he didn't commit a crime because he tried to do something afterwards. That doesn't matter. That's completely irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant.
I don't think that that's the case. Seriously. Look, I'm gonna keep going to this. I disagree with what happened on January 6th. I don't like what Mike Pence did in 2020.
Mike Pence
like John Eastman.
Mike Pence stopped all of that from happening. So you should like what Mike Pence did.
God. We are gonna keep diving into this. Do you not have any other points to bring up?
This is the most important thing. No.
This is the only thing you are
justifying. You are justifying the erosion of our democratic process.
The only possible point you can bring up is January 6th.
It's because you are justifying the erosion. You are justifying the erosion of our democratic process. I just laid out to you exactly. I just laid out to you exactly how it breaks the Electoral Count Act, and now you just don't care. Like this is the problem.
That's the It's insane.
What you just laid out is making it pointless for the American people to vote. Why would the American people vote if the vice president can make the determination unilaterally as to who is the president again? What's the fucking point of voting?
Look, I'm going to say this once and for all. Can we please agree to disagree?
No, I can't agree to disagree because you have like a mind prison. You're in a mind prison right now. There's no This is the craziest thing. You read out the exact way that Mike Pence violated or they were asking Mike Pence to violate the Electoral Count Act, and you're acting like him trying to do something afterward would justify him breaking the first law. Like this is insane. This is insane because you are justifying someone who put the fate of the election in the sole hands of the vice president. That is not democracy. You are removing the ability for people to vote if the vice president can just make the unilateral determination as to who becomes the president again. And Donald Trump has set the standard, and you proudly support that.
Okay, so is this over? Is this the only thing you wanted to talk about?
It might have to be, because when I made my initial statement about how Donald Trump is an authoritarian who has no respect for our democratic processes, this is exactly what I'm laying out, and you haven't given a coherent argument as to why this wouldn't violate our process. You actually laid out exactly how it would, and then you just like brain farted about it. Like, whenever I call him an authoritarian, this is the exact reason, and you don't even have any substantive disagreements with me. That's the problem.
I I disagree that that it would have been against the law.
You are wrong. That's not a disagreement. You are just wrong. You read out exactly how you were wrong.
Look,
Can
I'd
we
like
disagree?
to focus. I'd like to focus on what happened 4 years from then,
Listen,
rather than
I know
what
that you
happened
would
then.
I know
Look,
that you would like to focus on that, but we can't live in a reality where we want to focus
oh
on that.
my God, and I mean, at some point, people have to move
Your
on, right?
priorities,
I mean,
no.
wars
The point that we
happen,
move on is
wars
when Donald
happen,
Trump never
people
steps
die.
foot in the
At
Oval
some point,
Office.
you
That's
have to move on,
when we move
okay?
on.
And it doesn't matter
Noah, when we
anyway,
move on.
because Mike Pence
Oh,
did
trust me,
not
I
do
know that it doesn't matter.
what he was asked of doing.
Noah,
All right, so
we cannot move on as long as you're full-throatedly supporting the guy who tried to do this. As long as you are denying the facts of the situation, pretending like you disagree with me, even though you laid out the exact letter of the law that exactly reinforced what I
I'm
was
not.
saying. Like, you can't.
First,
This isn't a matter of
first off,
disagreement. This is a matter of derangement.
I'm not pretending about anything. Second off,
This is not a
I
matter of
know that
disagreement. You are
you
just
love to keep
acting
hammering
deranged.
on about this point, but at some point we have to move on. We have to. I
We'll
mean,
move on in 4 years
was
whenever the
four
person who tried to do this is out of
years ago.
office.
This was 4 years ago. Exactly. This
Noah,
was
we'll
four
move on.
years ago, and you're still
Noah,
talking
we will
about
move on in 4 years whenever the person who tried to do this that you just voted for is out of office. That is when we will move on, because just
that's
because
when you will.
when you voted him
That's
in,
when you
when you
will
voted
move
him
on.
in, you reinforced all of this behavior.
I actually can't vote, so.
When you were actively taking part in go out to vote initiatives, so you were playing part in people
I
voting.
would.
So that's the problem. Whenever your party stops voting for people who try to violate the democratic processes, I'll stop talking about how they tried to violate the democratic processes. But until then, until you can find a decent candidate, I won't move on.
Look, even the higher ups in the Democratic Party aren't talking about this as much as you do. Honestly,
I agree. I think
it's
they should. I
kind of
don't think Donald Trump should be able to do an interview without going through 2 hours of all of this, without him admitting to every single one of his crimes. There shouldn't be a single time that Donald Trump is asked about anything where it doesn't start with this, because this is the most important attack on our democracy since the fucking Civil War, and no one cares. I don't know if it's just because the Republicans love authoritarianism, or if it's just because people don't know,
since
but
the Civil War.
yes.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so Noah,
You really, really, really need to get your priorities straight if you think
Noah,
this is the biggest attack on our
you're telling me
democracy
to
since the
you're
Civil
telling me to get my priorities straight,
Wow.
but you don't even know what
Wow.
happened. You laid out exactly how it broke the law, but then you like post hoc justified breaking the law. Like, you have to get your priorities straight, because you're trying to do everything you possibly can to get off of talking about this incredibly important discussion. You were laughing at
Honestly,
me
I
for
don't
calling him an authoritarian, and now you're justifying him being an authoritarian.
First of all, I'm not justifying anything. Nothing happened on January 6th or regarding the entire 2020 election that you're saying he wanted to happen. So it didn't happen.
Did
So
they not have the meetings
even if
with
he was trying to be
Did they not write the Eastman memo? Did they
they
not have the meetings with Greg Jacob and Mike Pence? Did that not happen? Did Hirschman not have
I've
private
already
meetings with John Eastman about how insane his proposal was? Did Donald Trump not call him the greatest constitutional lawyer in America?
Donald Trump has said a lot of flattering things about a lot of bad people. He is somebody who responds to flattery and responds to good actions and
You are
loyalty.
justifying bad actions by saying
Everybody in
this.
the world knows that. However, I'd like to move forward, and I think that not moving forward is what's keeping people like you stuck in the past and permanently litigating over things that do not need to be litigated, especially since what you're proposing Trump wanted didn't happen in the first place. It's extremely, extremely sad and
Okay,
pathetic to
Noah,
continue going
you
down
agree that
this.
J6 was bad, right? Do you think it was?
I agree.
Go ahead.
I I I agree that people entering the Capitol while voting uh, certification was being held was bad, yes.
Do you like that Donald Trump called it a day of love last month? Okay,
I
this is why.
disagree
This is
with
why. I won't give it up until Donald Trump stops justifying it. This is the problem. You can say that I'm living in 2020, but just a
first
month
of
ago,
all,
Donald Trump
Danielle,
called it a day of love, even though one of his supporters was shot and
first,
killed.
first, first of all, I'd like for you to calm down. All right, calm down, please. Second of all, um, I do think that it was a day of love in the context that they were supporting Donald Trump on that specific day. So in that specific context, I do agree that it was a day of love. Also, that may have been taken out of context anyway, and you may have just got that from CNN or wherever the hell you get that from. So
Okay. Do you think that Joe Biden stepping down and Kamala Harris taking his place was a coup?
I think that the pressuring of Joe Biden to step down was a coup a coup similar activity.
You have okay. No, I don't think we could go any further with this. There's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else to go with that.
Well, there's nowhere else to go with you.
Yeah,
Honestly, I I don't see how you could continue talking about something that happened 4 years ago and
four
then
whole
bring up
years ago.
Kamala Harris taking over for Joe Biden in the presidential race and then say that there's nowhere else to go. You
Four
want to
whole
dwell
years
in the
ago.
past, you live in it,
Yeah,
and
ancient times of 2020. All right, I wish you well, Noah.
well, it's ancient in political years, and you
I
too.
wish you well. Yeah. Ah. Okay. Now, what a time. This is the problem, is that people want to distance themselves so far from all of the actions that that happened, on January 6th, 2021, but then they always justify it, or they voted the person in who took part in that. Like, I'm not going to give it up until you stop supporting it.